Hey, I'm Kevin, and this is HFX by Bike, a channel all about getting around Halifax by bike. I put out a video a little bit earlier in the week making the general points that Halifax really does have pretty bad traffic for being such a small city. Due to space and cost constraints, there's really no ability to expand the carrying capacity for cars in the urban core, and ultimately, the only way to get people to escape traffic is to give them better alternatives, which means some combination of transit and bikes. That video ended up being inadvertently prescient, as just a few days later, the Mayor of Halifax sent a letter to the rest of Regional Council notifying them that he intends to bring forward a motion to Council on Tuesday, June 10th, pausing the design and construction work on any new bike lanes in Halifax. I've linked the full letter in the description so you can see for yourself, but here are the three premises meant to serve as a basis for the desired outcome. Everyone is mad about the traffic caused by the bike lanes. The bike network keeps getting more and more expensive to build. The province at some point is going to release its own transportation plan that might help Halifax. Therefore, we should pause any work on new bike infrastructure projects in the city. On its surface, the statement just says that traffic is bad and everyone is mad about it, which is true. I made a whole video about it. But to be relevant to the rest of the letter, the point being made is that Halifax's current traffic problems are caused by bike lanes, specifically by taking traffic lanes away from cars. Trying to take the claim seriously, I worked through every completed or in-progress bike project for the most recent staff report to see if there are fewer traffic lanes than before the build-out. I also asked some people more knowledgeable than myself about the bike network to see if they could think of any lanes that have been erased. 74% of the projects are either fully off-road or local street bikeways where bikes and cars fully share the road in a traffic-calmed environment. The road had the exact same configuration and capacity for car traffic after the bike infrastructure was installed as it did before it. The remaining 26% were at least on the road, and so theoretically could change how traffic works. I looked at each project in Street View before and after implementation to see if any of the traffic lanes were dropped. In general, the way that on-road bike lanes are built in Halifax is by taking a combination of excess road space and parking space and converting it into dedicated space for bikes. This means that the capacity of the road for car traffic is the same before the bike lanes as after. You can see this on builds like Almond Street. It had one traffic lane of capacity per direction before the bike lanes were installed and the same amount after. The traffic lanes were just pared down to the size appropriate to the vehicles that they carry. There's even still street parking along most of it. Were there any instances of bike infrastructure flat out just eating a lane of road capacity? Not really, but I found three where you could at least try to make a case. The Greenway multi-use path on Barrington was extended from the McDonald Bridge to Devonshire. Before this, the section of road had 4 lanes and afterwards it only had 3. But this gets the order of events wrong. The 4th lane was removed by the city because it was too narrow to support the high amounts of bus and truck traffic that it was receiving. Before this change was made permanent, construction on a nearby retaining wall necessitated dropping down to 3 lanes, and after monitoring traffic in the area during construction, the city concluded that it didn't make any difference anyways. Dropping down to 3 lanes from 4 opened up a bunch of space on the side of the road, which was shortly used to install a bonus bike corridor along Devonshire and Barrington that wasn't in the original 2017 network plan, so the lane reduction caused the bike infrastructure, not the other way around. Weiss Road, immediately north of the McDonald Bridge, had 3 lanes per direction before the bike lanes were installed, and now they just have 2. But further north towards the intersection with Boland, Weiss dropped down to a single southbound lane and turn lanes in each direction northbound. For practical purposes, the 3rd lane in each direction had a capacity of 0, since any traffic in them had to originate from or terminate to a single lane. As such, removing the lanes had no impact on car capacity. This also explains why the bike lanes in this section of Weiss are so large. They're not there for the bike lanes, they're there as an exercise in removing the dead lanes from the roadway. Probably the best case I found is removing the slip lane from the intersection of Gottingen, Duke, and Brunswick downtown. Flat out, the slip lane was removed and the 2-way Rainy bike lane replaced it to connect directly to the Brunswick Street painted bike lanes. In this case, removing slip lanes is actually a pedestrian safety measure. Unmanaged right turns are a leading cause of drivers hitting pedestrians in Halifax, and removing them is something the city is more or less doing by default whenever it recapitalizes a road with high levels of pedestrian activity. We can look at the impact this had on congestion by looking at traffic studies in the area before and after the slip lane was removed. A 2023 traffic study showed that roughly 20% decline in cars approaching the intersection from the direction of Gottingen and Rainy relative to 2014. This sounds pretty stark until you look at the other approaches. Over the same period of time, there was a similar proportional increase in cars approaching the intersection from Brunswick Street. That is, people shifted their path of travel from the lower capacity route to the higher capacity one. So, of all the dozens of projects in the bike network build-out, virtually none has touched a single lane of traffic. The one that did arguably would have happened even without the bike lane being installed, if only for pedestrian safety reasons, and regardless appears to have had little or no impact on the number of drivers able to use the intersection to get around. That bikes aren't driving the city's traffic crisis becomes more obvious when we look at where the major sources of delay are. It's places like the Windsor Street Exchange, Roby Street leading to the McKay Bridge, the Armdale Roundabout, Highway 102, and a few other places like maybe North Street. None of these places have bike infrastructure. The traffic is the result of too many people trying to drive in the same place at the same time. That's what traffic is. You can't solve this without giving people options to get around that allow them to beat the traffic. This feeds into something that makes the argument that bike lanes are causing traffic even sillier. While not touching existing traffic capacity, adding bike infrastructure increases the total carrying capacity of the road. Here's an example. For an upcoming video, I recorded evening rush hour on the outbound side of South Park Street and counted how many cars and bikes moved towards the intersection at Sackville. Yeah, I'm that kind of fun. Over the course of rush hour, 15% of all outbound traffic was being handled by the bike lane. There isn't anywhere for any extra car lanes at the intersection to go, so adding another traffic lane wouldn't work even if you removed the bike lane to do it. Let's say we ditch the bike lane and fill it with parking spaces or trees or something. We just made the traffic on South Park Street 15% worse during rush hour. If you think the people on bikes should move off to the side, congratulations, you've just reinstalled the bike lane. So in general, I don't think the bike infrastructure installed to date can be said to have negatively impacted traffic in the city. As far as I can tell, this is an entirely baseless claim. The second point is broadly true, but requires some context. The claim made in the letter is that the cost to build the bike network has ballooned from $25 million to an eye-watering $93 million. Let's break down the financial timeline for the network and see where it went wrong. Circa 2017, the city started planning out what a bare-bones bike network would look like and how much it would cost to build. The answer was about $25 million. The federal government agreed to give the city just shy of $21 million for a network that was scheduled to be completed in 2022. Per an April 2025 staff report, the network is roughly 60% complete if you include the interim builds. To date, building the network has cost roughly $15.8 million in total up to the end of March of this year. With other levels of government funding over 80%, that puts Halifax's contribution to the bike network at roughly $400,000 per year since 2017, or if you prefer, 0.04% of annual spending. This pattern will continue for one additional year, with there being about $8 million left in federal and provincial matching funds that are basically free money for the city as long as they're spent on bike infrastructure. My understanding is that the money evaporates if we don't use it this year. After 2026, any new work on the bike network will have to be funded entirely by the city, other funding opportunities notwithstanding. The current estimate sits at about $67 million for the rest of the network. The reason for the spiraling costs in the bike network build-out seems to be a few interrelated issues, namely, several of the projects are more technically complicated than initially thought, often leading them to take longer to plan and implement and driving up the costs. Much of this relates to accommodating cars. For example, connecting the McDonald Bridge bikeway to the North End bikeway a couple of blocks away is easy if you just use the existing road space. Just cut a hole in the fence, repaint some lane lines, and you're 90% of the way done in an afternoon. What makes it complicated is trying to achieve the same goal while not modifying motor vehicle traffic in any way. Once that condition is set in stone, you have to start designing things like elaborate flyovers to make the system work. It's not just bikes either. The city is planning to spend over $60 million just to acquire the land on Roby Street to add 900 meters of bus lane, instead of either dedicating existing lanes to Roby on transit or making a nearby low-capacity street like Windsor into a bus priority corridor. When Halifax tries to build high-capacity transportation system, most of the cost comes down to accommodating cars and making sure that drivers aren't impacted by the project in any way. Some of the project risks of the bike network aren't even technical, as the recent staff report listed things like delays in decision-making and scope creep. They aren't very common, but the baseline design of the network has changed over time, with some projects being dropped and others added based on unexpected obstacles and opportunities. These delays then caused projects to get hit by a wave of inflation in late 2021 and 2022, further driving up the cost to complete projects. Any project not already completed by that point was basically always going to have substantial cost overruns relative to the original baseline budget. According to Dartmouth councillor Sam Austin's recent blog post on the topic, essentially every major construction project the city is undertaking is suffering from the same problem, not just the bike network. To be clear, I actually want to see a full accounting of how and why each project ran into so many delays and cost overruns. Some projects on their face seem very simple, and I struggle to understand why they've been so hard to implement. Others, like the McDonald Bridge bike flyover, are complicated, but they've seen like a 10-fold increase in costs, and I'd read a report explaining exactly how that happened in granular detail. For the next year or so, the vast majority of any bike infrastructure that gets built is still going to be paid for by federal and provincial matching funds. Not building those projects is essentially spending $8 million not to build bike infrastructure to fix traffic, and I think that's really dumb. Beyond the matching funds, Halifax has to start paying for the rest of the network on its own if it wants to have one, and that becomes a question of priorities. The city is currently snarled by car traffic, and the road system in the urban core is already maxed out with no real ability to meaningfully expand capacity without spending billions of dollars on land acquisition. The only way out of this dynamic is by providing ways for people to get around that don't involve using a car. There's a worthwhile argument for focusing on transit, bikes, or a combination of the two, and in maximizing the return of the value of the money that we spend on these projects. But this isn't a problem that can be solved by staring at our feet. I obviously come down to the side of funding both transit and bikes more aggressively, given that the effects of traffic congestion are exponential. Spending $1 or $2 million absorbing just 15% of the rush hour traffic on a downtown street is an excellent return on investment, to use the example from before. Every year, the city pays out more than the total remaining cost of the bike network just to do road maintenance and resurfacing projects, and a similar amount was recently spent to buy land for just 900 meters of bus lane on Roby Street. In that context, I don't think the costs of the remaining bike network build-out are that out of line with the value that it would create. There's nothing really to say about this one because there's nothing to it on the record. It's essentially leaving the door open for the provincial government providing for the city's planned bus rapid transit program, or commuter rail, or accelerating the Mill Cove ferry terminal, or expanding Highway 102, or something. It's essentially just hoping that the province is going to step in and fix traffic for the city somehow, so there's nothing for me to really engage with on a factual basis. Putting it all together, bike lanes don't seem to be causing traffic because, by design, roughly 0 lanes of carrying capacity have been removed to accommodate them. Meanwhile, significant portions of traffic in the urban core are being handled by the bike lanes, with future projects having the ability to do the same elsewhere. The build-out of the network so far has been a good return for money, but that mostly comes down to being heavily subsidized by other levels of government. With the subsidy ending after 2026, the city needs to decide how badly it wants to alleviate traffic by getting people to switch from cars to bikes or to transit. We can pay money to alleviate traffic by letting people exit it, or we can not pay and have traffic. Those are the two options. In theory, the province could step in and use its enormous debt carrying capacity to spend infinity dollars on a mystery mega project to solve Halifax's traffic problems. Or, hear me out. Halifax is a city of 500,000 people with taxing authority and can just plan, fund, and implement its own transportation system. The entire premise of our transportation plan as a city can't be, hopefully somebody will save us. That attitude is a big part of why Halifax has disproportionately bad traffic, and the current stunt with the bike network is a continuation of that thought process. The mayor's motion to pause construction on the bike network will be happening this Tuesday on June 10th. Several of Halifax's cycling and transportation advocacy organizations have scheduled events at City Hall starting at around 8 a.m., and I hope that you'll consider attending to show your support. The most concrete thing you can do is contact your councillor and let them know that you're tired of traffic and want a bike network completed so that you don't have to sit in it. I've included all the information that you need to effectively direct your feedback in the description of this video. Thanks for watching through to the end of the video. If you like this kind of thing, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more videos all about getting around Halifax by bike. As always, thanks for watching and see you next time.